Hello, everybody. Once again, I'm Dan Feminella. Today's presentation, and the reason you're here, is how to future-proof your Jira integrations and avoid API change panic. So what does that really mean, and what are we going to do? The reason we're talking to you today is because of GDPR and because of what Jira Cloud has made changes because of GDPR, and I'll get into what each of those are. I'm going to talk about those. I'm going to talk about how Tasktop has an integration factory and how we are always continuously testing all of our integrations against all of our vendors and all of the APIs. Then a kind of brief conversation about a value stream architecture diagram, kind of a sample of what customers, how their integrations are running and what they look like. And then a brief demo. And in the demo, I will show you an integration actually running through Jira Cloud and talking to another tool, how that could look to the end users, and then I'll briefly show you how I've built that demo using Tasktop Integration Hub. So let me move on. So GDPR, what is it? It's the General Data Protection Regulation. It is an EU regulation. It came out last May, about 8 months ago, and it's all around data compliance. It's all around who should monitor the data. You should have a data compliance officer. You should be watching for personal information. What happens if there's data breaches, or why shouldn't you have data breaches, but what do you do if there is one, and how to lock up personal data. The way GDPR is spelled out is this. The regulation applies to the processing of personal data wholly or partly by automated means and to the processing other than by automated means of personal data which form part of a filing system or are intended to form part of a filing system. Wow, that is why I'm not a lawyer. I have no clue what they're saying there, but that is the first paragraph in what is GDPR. So what does that really mean to you and me? It means it's how you should handle people's personal information. Even though this is an EU regulation, so we would think maybe it has to do with companies that are headquartered in EU. So that's true. So if your company is in the EU, you have to follow this regulation. If you offer goods or services in the EU, you have to follow this regulation. If your customer or your customer's information is in the EU, then you have to follow this regulation. So even though here in North America we may or may not be, an EU company, but we definitely have EU customers. Jira or Atlassian has EU customers. Jira Cloud is across the whole world, so it definitely has EU customers. And that is why Jira Cloud has made changes to their API, is because of GDPR. Okay. So is it really that simple? Is that it? Is it just these, 4 bullets that I typed in? It's like, no, there's 11 chapters and 99 articles. There's, hundreds of pages of legalese, but way too much to cover in 30 minutes. You can look it up. There's websites dedicated to it. You can even find the actual kind of legal regulation at this website. Okay, so why should I care? Why do I really care about GDPR? Is it really going to affect me? Is it not going to affect me? This is what scared me, is that GDPR is not just a regulation or a law. They put penalties behind it. So companies can get fined, and they can get fined up to 20 million euros, which is, you really don't want to say to your company, oh, I'm sorry, we didn't follow GDPR. I'll help write the check for 20 million euros. That's not it. So it is a good point of interest that it's not just a rule we should follow. There's penalties behind it. Okay. So what is changing in the Jira Cloud? So Jira Cloud has seen all of these GDPR changes. So now they've went through and they've making changes to their API. So they're changing to how users are identified. They're removing as much personal information as they can. Username, user keys will all be removed from the REST APIs. Users will be identified by their Atlassian account ID, or the account ID is what they're calling it, to try to kind of non-personalize the user information. 2, they're changing all of their APIs in the background. So all personal data will be removed from the REST APIs. It'll all be replaced with account ID where appropriate. They've made a lot of changes for kind of migrating to GDPR compliant versions, and there's a full migration guide that Atlassian has been put out, and they've been doing this since May. They've been announcing that this is coming, and they've been making changes to their APIs. And it's changing to the visibility of user information, so restricting what you can see, what you can't see, and what happens in case there is a vulnerability. So Jira Cloud has made tons of changes to their APIs. I work for Tasktop. Why am I telling you all this? I'm telling you this because we're an integration company, and how we talk to Jira Cloud is through their API. So Tasktop has been making changes to our integrations because of Jira Cloud API changes, because of GDPR. So this is big for Tasktop. It's important to us because we have a lot of customers that use Jira Cloud, and if we don't make the changes, come the time that Jira Cloud goes live, or with the GDPR changes April 29th, then Tasktop has to be there and be ready for it. So there's a lot of information that Atlassian has put out there for all the developers and their community. So it's good to read it and understand the changes that they have made. Okay. Are you ready? You don't want to get caught out when the deadline arrives. Again, I said the deadline is April 29th. Yesterday, the deadline was March 29th. So even Atlassian is making changes as they go and trying to become product, production ready. And some of their products are, and some of their products have not been production ready yet. So I think that's why they moved their deadline to April 29th. So Tasktop has been working with Atlassian on a weekly basis and sometimes a daily basis. Every time they make changes to their API, we get a copy of it. We have to test all of our integrations against all of their API to make sure that what they said has changed, and we make changes to our code. And we also have to make sure that what we fixed last time still works. Okay. The Jira Cloud API changes have been numerous, spread over time. They started making changes in, I believe in November is when they started changing the API, getting ready for this date. They announced, again, that it was happening in May, and for every month since then, they've been making announcements, making changes, telling their community, even Tasktop, while we're making changes, we are informing not just all of the Tasktop employees, but we've been informing our customers as well, saying, this is coming, be ready for it. And since it is coming, Tasktop has a new version, so you need to upgrade to the latest version, because the latest version has the GDPR or these Jira Cloud API changes. So we're trying to keep all of our customers informed, even if they're not reading the Atlassian kind of updates. So the one scary thing is, since we've been doing this so long, if your integration vendors, hasn't done anything about it, or they're just starting to make the changes, they're too late. Again, this has been months and months of work getting up to this point, making sure everything is good. It's not something you can just fix overnight. So it's just a word of warning to the world. Okay, so how does Tasktop kind of keep up with this, and what do we do to be proactive? So we have our integration factory, and our integration factory is what our CEO calls this is the most expensive thing on our kind of budget. Because we have to keep all versions of our system running, all versions of all of the APIs we talk to. So that means we've got a lot of servers running, a lot of different versions, so we could do testing against. Okay? Because we test against 300 plus tools versions every day. So if you think of ServiceNow, or if you think of Jira or Jama, or you think of any Remedy, they have multiple versions of tools that they support, so we support all their versions. all their versions that they support might have different APIs. So we have to support all of those different APIs because we never know what integration our customers are going to need to run. So nightly we do these API tests against every tool, every version, and every version of Tasktop. You can imagine the numbers grow pretty quickly. So why we do this is so you can upgrade from, Remedy X to Remedy Y and not worry about it because we support that version, so we support the API. You want to give you confidence that your new version will work with Tasktop, and so tomorrow the integrations will work just like they did yesterday. And we want to reduce, your fear of outages, or at least reduce any outages during your upgrades. To put that into kind of perspective in real numbers, we support 16 different versions of Jira. This is not including Service Desk, this is not including Zephyr, it's 16 different versions. I went into our documentation, I counted the other day, because of all of their dot releases, and they may have different versions in the API. I talked to engineering this morning to get the updated number, and the man in engineering told me we did 37,747 tests last night against Jira alone. That's all of our versions against all of Jira's APIs and all of the versions of all the features in the API. So this integration factory is a kind of a big part of Tasktop, and it's why we can say that we talk to all these versions. If you kind of put that into perspective a little more, we deal with 60 plus different tools that we have integrations with. So nightly we're running about 1 million different tests against all the versions and all the APIs just to make sure everything works. It's a big thing. Okay. So the value stream architecture diagram, this is how we work with our customers, and we like to draw these diagrams for them. We work with them and they tell us the tools that they're having, we help them define where the flow of data is and how things can be automated or not automated. So this is a kind of a sample customer where they've got their requirements tool, they've got their kind of project management tool, they've got Jira Cloud in the middle, they've got ALM for testing, they've got TFS for doing the code, and Remedy in the back end when after implementation and if there's any incidents. All of the red lines are integrations that Tasktop is helping with or is doing between these tools. It's moving all the data and keeping all of these artifacts in sync. The scary thing is what happens if Jira Cloud made their API changes and Tasktop didn't listen to them and didn't understand GDPR and we didn't make the changes. All of these integrations would break on, April 30th or May 1st if Tasktop wasn't involved in these integrations. So it is something that customers do have to worry about, and that's why we are worrying for them. But it is a kind of a standard flow of what our customers do. What I'm going to do next is a brief demo. Before I get into the demo, I haven't seen any kind of questions appear. Are there any questions about Jira API, Jira Cloud API, or GDPR? Give you a minute to.
We don't have any questions yet, but if you do have any, feel free to enter them in now, and you can get those answered right after the demo.
Okay. The demo is going to be a brief demo of just Jira and TFS, an integration, a sample kind of integration between them. The flow would be someone enters a story in Jira, that needs to go over as a PBI or product backlog item into TFS, where the developer would see the PBI, they would work on some code, maybe they would find a bug, maybe they did some testing, but maybe a bug would be added into TFS, and I want that bug to go back to Jira so it is visible. What Tasktop allows our customers to do is to be able to be in their tool of choice. Let the developers stay in TFS, let the agile coaches, agile people stay in Jira, let the testers stay in ALM, let the requirements people stay where they want to stay. But Tasktop will allow you to move the data between these tools, so your end users, your developers, your kind of people in IT are not double entry. They don't have to log into multiple systems. They don't have to do manual rekeying of data. That's what Tasktop is. That's what Tasktop gives you. And then after the kind of the demo of Jira and TFS, I'm going to jump quickly into Tasktop itself, into the UI, and show you how I built the integrations. This way, it'll kind of give you an idea of how easy it is to create these integrations and set them up and get them up and running. Okay, so for the demo, what you see here, I'm in the Tasktop UI. I'm going to show this first quickly and then come out of it, but I'm really going to be talking about kind of the Jira Cloud and talking to TFS. I do have two integrations running here. It's not just one line. So I've got epics, I've got kind of epic/stories going back and forth and defects going back and forth. I know I'm just talking about Jira and TFS, but this is my entire demo environment. These are all the different integrations that I've been building over time. So you can see how lots of tools want to talk to lots of different tools, and I've got lots of data flowing back and forth at all times. And this may not be exactly what a customer will do. Maybe a customer is going to have 4 or 5 tools or 6 tools, but this will show you the power of the integrations that you can build with Tasktop. Okay, so I'm in Jira Cloud. I'm going to create a new story here. We're going to call this, what day is it? It's the 12th of March. 12th March, Jira. That's way you know that's the one that was created today. This is the description. Great. And I'm going to create that. We should refresh here. So there's my kind of Jira ticket. It is a story. I created it in Jira. This is the description. Everything's all good. But what's happening in the background is Tasktop is kind of taking that integration and seeing that there is a new story in Jira, and it took that information and sent it over to TFS. So you see I'm in TFS now, and if I refresh the screen, we see that a new PBI shows up here, that product backlog item, right? 12th of March, Jira story, this is the description. I can update kind of the description. I can update any of the fields. I can update the title. You can add comments to it, add attachments to it. So anything I do in Jira or in TFS are now linked, these two artifacts. The story in Jira is linked to the PBI in TFS. And any updates I make in TFS will come back to Jira. So if I come back to Jira, and I refresh this, we should see that the description has changed and the title has changed. Right? So this is more description from TFS. Just simple. Tasktop is taking the information that I've added to TFS or Jira and sending it to the other tool. So keeping your end users in sync without having to log into multiple tools. So if I come back into TFS, the second part of my story was maybe I'm in TFS. I want to create a new bug here for some reason. I've created a new bug, so we're going to call this whatever, right? So I'm creating a bug here, but I want to maybe link it to that story. So you get kind of that visual representation inside of, what do we call it? Let's see if we can find it. Good. So there's that story in TFS. If I say OK to that, say OK to here. So now I've created the bug in Jira or in TFS. I haven't saved it yet. I've also linked it to the story in TFS. And if I save that, a couple things are going to happen now. Same as what happened before in Jira. TFS saves this bug. TFS understands that it is linked to that story. But now Tasktop is taking that information, going back to Jira and saying, okay, Jira, here's a new bug, and this bug should be linked to this story. So if I refresh Jira, you'll see that the bug appears. You'll also see that it is related to that story. And that is one of the big powers of Tasktop is what we call ARM, or Artifact Relationship Management, where it is kind of mapping that parent-child relationship in one tool, the parent-child in the other, or just linked things. And that is all done through kind of Tasktop. That's all I wanted to show in kind of Jira and TFS. And I think I just want to kind of jump quickly into how I built that. And how I built that is through the Tasktop UI. Tasktop UI, to create an integration, you need 4 things: a repository, a model, a collection, and then ultimately the integration. The repository is just the pointer to the tool and what service account I'm using. So if I go into Jira Cloud, and this is kind of the location that it's pointing to. If I go back to my old kind of authentication and I put in my Jira password, it is not going to connect because of the cloud is saying, no, we're not going to do username and password anymore. That is not a valid authentication. So I'm going to go back to kind of email address and token. The token you have to create inside of Jira itself. And I test that connection, and we'll see that it's connected. So I know I have a good connection to Jira. Don't want to save that. If I go to a model, models are our kind of standard definition of or how to normalize tables. And if you come to us and want a full demo, you'll understand more about the models. And then with a collection is my kind of a combination of I want to get stuff from Jira. Right? This is a Jira test on the 12th. I want to point to my Jira Cloud instance, and now you'll see the API in action. As soon as I tell it I want to point to Jira, it makes a call out to Jira and says, well, there's 10 projects out there. Which projects do you want to work with? Well, I want to work with Dan's project. Once I say Dan's project, it says, okay, well, these are the artifacts out there. Well, I want to work with a bug. I want to map it to my model. And if I save that, you'll notice that, again, our API calls out and pulls back the schema for that bug. We'll see that there's 12 records or 83 fields in that bug in Jira. So these are all the different things that Tasktop is doing via the API and via our connector to kind of reach out to Jira and pull all of the fields from Jira, and then I can line them up to fields in my model. This is a very, very brief demo of how this works, but I just wanted to get you kind of a concept of it. To build an integration, I need 2 collections. I need the Jira pointing to the bug, and I also need TFS pointing to the bugs. I'm going to jump to the running integration that you just saw. So if I kind of go to my Jira Cloud integrations and pick the Jira bug one, you'll see that once I have these 2 collections, my TFS collection and my Jira collection, then it's very simply, I just go down through these like 8 steps and say, which way do I want the data to flow? I want a one-way creation between the 2, or maybe I want any bug created in either tool to go to the other tool. Right? So it's very easy to kind of set this up. I can also see, I can set kind of the filtering of when I want data to come over. I can set if I want comments to go back and forth, and comments are a big thing. Comments are, not just a text field, but it's a diary field. So all of our connectors kind of figure out how these tools work. Again, very brief kind of intro on how the Tasktop solution and the Integration Hub builds an integration. But you can come back and get more information from that later.